This is a story from one of my very favorite authors and storytellers, Edward Hayes. It's called The Christmas Eve Storyteller, and this is the fourth yarn, The Gift of the Magi. Once upon a time, three Oriental kings made a star-guided journey carrying with them three gifts. Their gifts are perhaps the most famous in all history: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. After they had presented them to the mysterious infant king lying in the stable where the star had led them, they returned home by a different route. As the three kings traveled homeward, each carried a souvenir of his star journey, carefully hidden from the others. When they stopped the first night on their way home, their attendants pitched the silk pavilions and made camp. And as the crescent moon appeared in the west, they finished their supper and retired. Even the camel drivers were asleep and all was silent. King Balthazar, however, sat alone in his tent in the glow of a brass lamp, reflecting on the gift of gold he had given the God King in Bethlehem. He smiled at himself for the need he had felt to take something, a small token of remembrance, from that insignificant stable where the infant lay. By the light of the lamp, he opened a golden case and removed a single piece of yellow straw, saying aloud, "I came on this quest to seek a king, a real king, because I did not feel kingly. I have always doubted my royalty. What makes me different from my camel drivers? Do I not have the same needs for food and drink, for love and physical comfort as they? How is a king different, after all, from a carpenter or any commoner?" Slowly he held the straw up to the light as he mused. "I, Balthazar, followed the star, seeking a god king to confirm my own kingship. For are not all crowns made of cardboard and all thrones of straw?" He replaced the straw in its precious case and continued. "Back in Bethlehem, the father of that child was only a common peasant, a simple village craftsman. Yet he was more regal than any king I have ever seen. And the child's mother, was she not queenly in her simple dignity? What I asked myself is the source of this inner nobility that can change peasants into royalty." King Balthazar walked to the entrance of his tents, looking up at the night sky crowded with stars. I saw the answer to my question in the eyes of that infant. True nobility comes from an anointing of the heart, not of the head. Quietly the king returned to his bed, and as he retired, he thought to himself, "I am returning home by a different route, and as a far different king. I rode to Bethlehem on my camel, high above the faceless sea of commoners, slaves and beggars, wondering about my kingship. I return home understanding that my camel drivers and every woman, man, and child I saw along the way are royal persons deserving of my respect and honor. Indeed, the star was an omen of a new age. It has raised the curtain on history, not upon a revolution of slaves and servants overthrowing thrones. This is an evolution as slaves and servants become equal to kings and queens." As Balthazar blew out his oil lamp, he sighed. "Such an age is beyond imagination." And the three silk pavilions were raised and the camels bedded down as the noises of the caravan quieted. On the second night, everyone had retired and the last embers of the campfire glowed orange in the darkness. King Melchior stood outside his pavilion holding an oblong ivory box encrusted with rare jewels. The three kings had ridden these past 2 days in silence, each one reflecting on the events in that little village of Bethlehem. What, indeed, had they seen in that poor yet somehow sacred stable? Looking upward, King Melchior spoke as if to the sky. I followed one of your wondrous lights, hoping to find an answer to the most ancient of all riddles, the puzzle of life and death. My gift of myrrh was a sign of my inner quest. Myrrh is the ointment used for burial, and gifts tell a great deal about the giver. Ah, yes, even kings die, no matter how great or powerful they are. Somewhere in this world, I thought, there must be a magic charm, a secret to escape death. He opened the ivory box, removing a single yellow straw. I was ashamed, he mused, to tell the other two that I wanted a keepsake from that stable. For a long time he stood silent, looking at the straw he held. I remember once reading a passage from one of their prophets a long time ago. His name was Isaiah, as I recall, and he promised a king to these people, and when he comes, he will destroy death forever, and God will wipe away the tears from all faces. King Melchior held the hollow straw up to his eyes, pointed it towards the most brilliant star in the night sky. Death, I now see, is like a straw, merely a passageway from one life to another, and we slip through as easily as my breath passes through this straw. And softly the wise men blew through his upraised straw. At that moment, King Caspar stepped out of the shadows, asking, Melchior, old friend, what are you doing with that piece of straw? Are you practicing a new form of magic? Oh, Caspar, what a start you gave me. It's only a piece of... I took it from the stable back there in Bethlehem. I wanted something to remind me of what I saw there, the infant we came to adore. As I knelt before him, I saw something more than an infant with his two humble parents. I sensed an absence of fear in his mother and father, a sense of meaning in their simple lives. And in the child's eyes, I saw the answer to a riddle that has given me no peace through all these many years. Caspar chuckled. Well, no fool like an old fool. Go to bed, friend. We have a hard ride ahead of us tomorrow. And he laughed again gently. A souvenir. You took a souvenir. On the third night, after the 3 silk pavilions had been erected and the camels fed and watered, the camp grew silent, as quiet as the vast sky above. King Caspar stood at the entrance of his tent, watching the stars as they turned in their ancient orbits. How strange, he thought, that we have ridden for 3 days without speaking to one another. He himself had said nothing more about his laughter the night before, nor had Melchior tried to explain why he had taken a souvenir from the stable. King Caspar took his leather saddle bag from inside his tent and opened a side pouch. He removed a silver flask inscribed with intricate hieroglyphics. Opening the flask and reverently placing it on the sand, he knelt before it. He made a profound bow, and after a few moments of silent adoration, he straightened but remained kneeling. And looking at the stars, he spoke. I confess to you, I also took a souvenir from that stable. I came on this star-led adventure because I needed to find a God to believe in. My gift of incense, a traditional offering to the holy, was a telltale sign of my search for belief. Oh, I believed in some sort of impersonal divinity, but I could put no form or reason to it. And in the stillness, the silk cloth of the pavilion rustled softly. I, the great Caspar, he spoke mockingly, was the agnostic king. I came seeking a religious experience, some divine revelation. And my disappointment must have been the greatest as we entered the livestock stable. I was the last of the 3 to approach the infant to adore him. How ungodlike it was the shabby stable, an infant lying in a bed of straw in a makeshift crib, his two peasant parents beside him. There were no heavenly lights, no divine thunder rumbling around us, no angelic music filled the stable, and my gift of incense in its golden chest seemed humorously out of place. Caspar removed a single yellow straw from the flask and bowed before it. I am sorry I laughed at Melchior. I was laughing at myself, really, for I had also taken a souvenir from that place. I remember it as if it were this very night. How slowly I came forward to kneel before the infant. It seemed cruel to refuse to do so, an embarrassment to my two fellow kings, so I simply pretended adoration. Then that tiny baby looked at me. Everything and everyone there was suddenly bathed in light. There was a brilliance in those small eyes greater than the star we had followed. The stable had become more awesome than any great temple I have ever visited. Everything, even the straw on the floor, was aflame with glory. That's why I picked you up. Leaving his tent, Caspar climbed to the top of a silent sand dune, and looking up into the starry night, he raised his fragile straw to the heavens. That child has come to end all religion and to make temples needless, he said. Religion by its name is that which separates life from God. This child, I know, will someday bring together life and religion as one. Common and ordinary life will become sacred. There will be no need for temples. And his arms swept outward to encompass the entire night sky. This will be the great temple. And out of the shadows stepped Balthazar and Melchior, and the three stood, without speaking, surrounded by the silence of the stars. And finally King Balthazar and each of us said, "We are going home a different way. We began our journey as men set apart by our birth, by our priestly knowledge, different from the common people we encountered. Noble companions, we have ridden 3 days now from Bethlehem. Did we find what we came seeking? If so, how has our view of life changed?" For a long time the three kings stood silent. Then they began to speak, each in turn. "I, Balthazar, have seen the beginning of a new age, the end of a time when only a few select are given reverence, treated as gods come to earth. I have seen the end of kings and queens as the anointed ones, for now every person will be seen as royal, unique, and possessed of great dignity. I, Melchior, have seen the death of death. Now I see only life in countless forms of transformation. And I, Caspar, what have I seen? I have seen God, and now I see God everywhere."